What's up, everybody? It's your boy Josh here at the Ideal Auto Factory. You may notice the sound is a little better thanks to my wonderful mic. I'm trying new things out here. We're definitely getting a lot more videos out. Today's video is going to be about the Rhino Max V2, which is a 1/10 scale rear-wheel drive drift car, RC drift car. So the purpose of this video is to bring awareness to the Rhino Max chassis. This chassis not only is something that is very unique, but it also is very unknown. A lot of people know it exists. A lot of people know that it's out there. A lot of people think it's cool. The problem is a lot of people buy it and they think it's like everything else. It comes with a manual, it comes with instructions, and boom, you drive it. No, not the Rhino Max. The Rhino Max chassis was built by someone just like me and you. And overall, I think it's a great chassis. I think that some people get it and they don't know what they really have. And they want to sell it, or they call it a bad chassis once they have it because it doesn't drive right or something like that. But I feel like overall, the chassis is wonderful. And if you actually take the time to research before you buy, you might find out that it's not something for you, or it's something that is you're never going to sell it. It's really awesome. It's getting to be less and less of a rare chassis and more of a chassis that is for what I would consider builders or people who like to get down and use their tools on this chassis. Without further ado, let's look at it. So without further ado, cue the intro. There's the box that the chassis comes in, and then I have my my chassis stand that I put on top just so you can see the car without the weight on the wheels. So now let's put some weight on the wheels, and that is how it sits. It sits just like that, and I'm going to show you how the spring rates are. I did not achieve that chassis movement with the stock shocks that are on there. The rear are stock, but the front are not. As of right now, everything on this car is not straight from out of the box. Now, when you get this chassis, it comes almost pre-assembled in the box, but you still have some stuff that you gotta assemble. The biggest thing you need to know is that there goes the manual. You scan that and you get the manual. It comes with magnetic mounts, and I've heard that or seen that those magnetic mounts are different. What I mean by that is, let's say there's 100 Rhino Maxes out there. Rhino Max 1 through 25 may have a certain magnetic mount, and the other ones have a different one. So Rhino Max 26 through 48 may have a different one, but at least all of them come with magnetic mounts. All of them come with magnetic mounts. All of them come with shocks, aluminum shocks and springs, and a bunch of other stuff. Now, the chassis itself. Let's open it up. Now, who doesn't love some awesome red carbon fiber and red aluminum parts? Now, the chassis itself comes pre-assembled. What I mean by pre-assembled is you don't get the shocks put on. The shocks you have to build. You have to put a servo in here and make all the turnbuckles. You also have to install the bottom front of the front end, and you also have to install the bottom half of the rear end. So that's rear lower arms, front lower arms, front turnbuckles, shocks, the body mounts. Of course, you got to assemble a motor and put the servo up front, and then of course the body mounts up front. What makes this chassis so desirable is the fact that it's built to hold interior parts, and you can put a 3D printed engine block over your servo. You can install an intercooler up front. It looks like an engine bay. I mean, you got basically where your radiator would sit. Then you got your shock towers. Then technically speaking, this would be like a firewall, battery tray, brake booster for that right-hand drive. What makes it so desirable is the fact that it has one-to-one scale like suspension. If you see, you have a shock that does not pivot on an arm. The top of the shock, or the rod end, is stationary up top, just like a regular car, and then the suspension moves and turns as the shock turns on the, what is it, a spindle almost? Yeah, so a spindle. A lot of things are adjustable that people don't know about, and people just leave it the way it is. The manual doesn't really tell you much about it to give you like, oh yeah, well this will be for a faster steering, this will be for a better, longer angle and things like that, because it's all built for drift. But as you can see here, there's slots. These slots right here correlate to the lower arms of the front end of the car. So you can adjust your caster. You can adjust the caster by sliding these forward or back. Now also, what's adjustable is this area right here. So you can slide this whole suspension setup forward. See, 1, 2, 3, 4. You can slide the whole suspension setup, meaning the engine bay and everything connected to it, this whole section right here. You can slide all of that forward or backwards. The whole wheelbase is adjustable. The whole front half is adjustable, even down to the way the servo is. So you see those 4 bolts here? The servo is adjustable. You can slide it forward or back. And by doing that, you adjust the toe out. You can adjust your steering angle. It's so many adjustments, but these adjustments only are for this vehicle. No other vehicle adjusts like that. All other chassis try to be really slim, and the chassis tries to be very lightweight, where the Rhino Max says, not really worried about that. We want a vehicle where we can put seats in, we can put action figures in, we can put a dash in, we can put a center console if you would like. I don't have all those things, but nonetheless, the chassis is not your average chassis. Up front, I do have a steering plate on it. The factory one is about, there's 3 different kinds, but mine is more so the wider one, kind of like a diamond, but not really like that. Let me get the rest of them so I can show you what I mean. So I use mine as a brace for my magnetic mounts on the rear of another car that I have. But what I want to show you is that the plate itself is this piece right here. And so your servo horn connects here, and then your steering turnbuckles connect to here on either side. Now, depending on which one you use, it offers different angles of steering, different accoutrements, different setups. So the overall point I'm trying to make here is that your chassis is not going to be like mine. Look at my toe out. I barely have any, but I still have a little bit. And then also on the accoutrement side of things, if you look, that's how mine's set up. Now, from the factory settings, you're not going to get a clear answer on what you need to do for this part. That's why you should do your research before you buy one of these. You need to make sure that you're able or willing to build it. You're willing to take the time out and get the perfect steering angle that you want. So here's mine. There's spacers and all this other stuff. But overall, let's look at the bottom. See the bottom half? And then you even got more settings over here on the bottom of the actual knuckle. I think there's 4 screws you can put that turnbuckle into, or the rod end, the ball end. Now, as far as my shocks are concerned, So up front, I have TR60s. The factory ones, they were binding. They were binding in that O-ring spot. So that O-ring spot right here, when you tighten up the bottom of the shock, it would bind and it wouldn't move freely because the rod end was getting stuck in there somehow. Maybe it's because, as you can see, that shock rotates a little bit. It goes at an angle when you turn the wheel, and so that probably messed with the actual rod of this, or the piston rod of the shock. So I ended up changing them out. But let me show you the stock shocks. Here is the stock shock. Of course, it has a red shock cap instead of a black one. The reason why this one has a black one on it right now is because over there I had to use the stock shock cap. These are a little too narrow. The difference between a Rhino Max shock and every other shock out there is the way that piston connects. Usually there's like a C-clip in there. Oh, focus in on me. Yep, you see that C-clip in there? There's a C-clip in here to hold that white piston with 3 holes. But a Rhino Max shock does not do that. It has a screw to hold in the piston. Really convenient to me because you don't have to fight the C-clip. But if you know how to install and build shocks, you're pretty good. You don't even have to worry about it. But that's pretty much the only difference. The shocks themselves come with a rod cap, a shock cap like this with a hole in the top. Now the shock goes in upside down. As you can see right there, it goes in upside down. And this filler piece right here, this black piece, when you build the shocks, you're supposed to cut it flat. Usually it's about that far out. It'll stick up like that. Right there, you can see how close the top of the shock, or the bottom rather, gets to that rod end. So if the shock cap was sticking out more, it would rub against it. So you have to cut it flat or flush with the cap, that rubber piece that goes inside the cap. You have to cut it flush so that the turnbuckle does not rub against it when you're making turns. Another thing to point out, right here is where the wheel can rub. Look how close I get to it. Look at that. Sometimes you're wondering why your chassis may not be running right. That could be your problem. Look how close that is. Reason why, the chassis itself, you can slide it forward. Probably not the reason why. I don't know the reason why. But still, you want to avoid that, adjust it forward. Bring all of the components forward. Or just get a smaller offset on the wheels. Now here in the middle, this is my battery holder. I like everything to be central. I must like everything to be central like that. So I took off the regular setup, and then I ended up putting on the RR conversion. So the motor's in the rear, spur gears on the side, ESC is up top, and then I made my own battery holder right here in the center. Usually there's a dash here, a center console, 2 seats, the dash, and a whole bunch of other stuff to make the car like look fully scale. But nonetheless, this is how I have mine set up. I'll go ahead and flip it around. Another quick tip. Out of the box stock, when this chassis first came out, the Rhino Max 2, when it first came out, people were like, you gotta Loctite everything, make sure everything's really nice and tight and things like that. Yeah, Loctite everything. That is a must. You must Loctite everything. I would not get this chassis and drive it the day you build it because it comes pre-assembled until you Loctite everything. The second piece is that when you first get it, it's going to come with it comes with a lock diff. With that diff coming factory, this hole right here, this hole is for the spur gear, this big white spur gear. That spur gear rotates in here, and it is the lowest point on the chassis. So you drive it outside, and one time you might hit a rock, boop, you might lose a tooth. So that's another reason why I converted it over to RR, so that I can prolong the life of my spur gear. I hope you guys enjoyed the video. It did take a little time to get that right. I probably did a little bit of rambling. I apologize. And of course, I don't think I did enough driving for you guys, so I'll have another video for that later on. Let me know in the comments what you think and whether or not you want to see more from the chassis. I've added weight to it. I've done a lot of other things to it. It's a fun chassis to just play around with, so I'm enjoying it. And I'll catch you guys on the next video. Y'all keep God first. Peace.